She's the Vice President of Operational Excellence with Alliance Safety Council. So responsible for the development of instructor-led and e-learning content produced at Alliance, and serves as the director of the Mid-South OSHA Training Institute. Man, you're busy. She's originally from New Orleans, has a bachelor's degree in accounting from Southeastern, been with Alliance since 2006 in multiple roles. Proud mother of 3 kids. And a Saints and a Tigers fan.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, please help me welcome Sheri Bankston.
Who else is a Saints fan? Did everybody breathe a sigh of relief last night? I did. Thank you. I appreciate all of you coming today. We're going to talk about innovations in training. My background is accounting from like another life. I've been in training for a long time now. So my group is, I lead the content groups at Alliance, and we all go to conferences and things, and we learn lots of cool things. I'm going to share a lot of them with you today. But before I get started, I have a little friend who really wanted to attend today's session with me. And she can be a little unruly at times, so I'm going to issue a disclaimer now. I'm not going to wake her up until I'm ready for her to speak. Her name is Pepper. And so Pepper is obviously a robot. She's programmed to do certain things, but she sometimes steps out of line. So I've covered myself if she steps out of line. So I'm going to wake Pepper up, and I'll just warn you, I've got to let her do her stretching and get ready to answer my questions and do some things on command. So Pepper, let's wake up. She's going to assess the crowd a little bit. She sees lots of friends here. Are you ready, Pepper? Let's get started.
Tell me what you'd like to do. Save or tap an option.
Need information.
All right. Here are some questions you can ask me.
Thank you. Tell us about yourself, Pepper.
My name is Pepper. I'm 4 feet tall and I am capable of detecting and reacting to humans. I can answer any question you program me to answer, and I can be a lot of fun. I can even dance.
You can dance?
Here are some questions you can ask me.
I like the dance option.
What would you like to do now?
Let's do something fun.
You got it. Here, which would you like to try?
Let's do freestyle.
Okay, let's dance.
All right, Pepper's going to dance for, I think, 30 seconds. She told me before this that she does not like to dance alone. So let's stand up. It's early. Let's get up. Let's do it. Let's dance with Pepper. Plus, I don't want to dance up here in front of you guys, because I am not known for my good dancing. Here you go, babe. All right, good job, Pepper. Y'all did a good job too. Thank you.
What would you like to do next?
Some information.
All right. Here are some questions you can ask me.
Pepper, can you introduce us to today's session?
You got it, girl. I would be happy to do that for you. Today, Sheri is going to talk to us about innovations in training. Personally, I think I'm the most interesting thing she has to talk about today, so it's probably all downhill from here. Ha ha ha. Here are some questions you can ask
Really
me.
funny. She's a jokester. Pepper.
I'm sorry, I
There
don't
you
know
go.
the answer to that. My humans are continually updating the things I know about.
That was why I
So
issued a
maybe I will
disclaimer.
find out soon. Here are some questions you can ask me.
Seriously, Pepper, can you tell us what we're going to talk about?
Yes, Sheri, I was only kidding. You do not have to be such a stick in the mud. Today, Sheri is going to start by giving a little background about training objectives before she talks about what you are really here to learn about, innovations in training. Sheri is going to talk about all of the new and exciting things available in the training world today. Things like virtual reality, augmented reality, 3D training, and other types of training. Here are some questions you can ask me.
I put Pepper to sleep because she already did one thing I didn't want her to do.
Just like kids.
Yeah.
You can do that to your kids.
I've tried this on my kids. It doesn't work. So let's get started. I wanted to talk to you guys. I know we're here to talk about innovations in training, but before we do any type of training program, and I see some very seasoned trainers in the room, I want to talk to you about some things that you need to consider before you choose a training program. So we're going to talk about the purpose of training, types of learners, the types of training, and then we're going to get into the innovations in training, and I also want to talk about some innovations on the data side, because that's, I believe, equally important when you're administering a training program. So I haven't timed anything, and it depends on how we interact with each other. If we get to a point where I think I need to speed up and go to the innovation part, which is what you guys are here for, then I'm going to do that. So let's get started. So first of all, what you need to consider when you're doing any kind of training program, you need to assess your audience, and you need to think about the training objectives. Is it hands-on? Is it just simple knowledge transfer? What are you trying to do with your learner? Who knows what this is? This is Bloom's taxonomy. Usually people put the wheel. I decided not to put the wheel because everybody's seen the wheel, and I thought this one was pretty cool. I'm not going to go into what Bloom's taxonomy is, but basically when you're writing training objectives, you want to select the level that you want to teach your learner, and these help guide verbs, and that'll kind of guide the rest of the training program. So usually you want to do an outline that will help you map out what your training is, and these verbs will help you plan your training. There's several types of learners, and one of the biggest challenges that we have when we're developing e-learning or any type of training program is you never know who's going to walk through the door. So you want to incorporate different elements in your training that are going to cater to different types of learners. So there's the visual learner, there's the auditory learner, reading, writing, and the kinesthetic. So I'm going to briefly go over these with you, and I'm going to use my family as an example. But first of all, how do you like to learn? Who in here has a learning preference? Have you been able to identify that in yourself? My favorite man right there.
I like the audio.
You like audio learning, so you like listening to me right now. Maybe not. Really flat. Okay, so let me talk about my family a little bit. This is my family. This was taken probably 3 weeks ago at my mom's house. I have a son who's 21 in mechanical engineering at LSU. My daughter on the right is a sophomore in college. She doesn't know what she's doing, but she's kind of getting there. She was in nursing and now HR, and she likes accounting now, so we don't know. And then Catherine is my baby on the left. She's 14 years old. We're going to talk about the types of learners that they might be, because even in your own household, you could have different types of learners. So I'll share a little bit of my experience. First of all, mom. That's me. When I think about training programs, I try to think about how I like to learn. And the best way that I can think is when I'm in the yard. So everybody who knows me knows I like to mow grass. I don't particularly like pulling weeds, but I like to round up, and I kind of like weed eating, but sometimes the weed eater gets the best of me. So, typical Saturday, I'm out, I got this weed eater. It was the kind where you put the strings in. Every time I would start it, the strings would go flying. So I tossed it one day. I was so mad, almost in tears, gave a brand new weed eater away. A few weeks later, I said, well, let me get the different kind, the kind with the little spool on it. And I got it, wrapped it all up, pull it, go to weed eat, suck the stupid weed eater string in, and I didn't know what I was doing. Literally almost in tears. My neighbor, to taunt me, was over in his yard with one hand behind his back, weed eating, and I was embarrassed, kind of. So I did the only thing I knew to do, and I pulled out a YouTube video. And I looked for a video about my specific weed eater, and I followed the steps, and I did what they told me to do, and then I was weed eating. So I like to watch a video, and I like to perform the steps. So what kind of learner might I be? I'm a kinesthetic learner. And this is something I've known for a long time. I like to tinker with things, I like to do things. Enter my son, Nate. That's a deer that he killed in Kansas a couple years ago. He's in mechanical engineering. This kid is driven, but he does a lot of reading and he does a lot of writing. So he takes notes, and then he goes back and he reads the textbook, and then he rewrites his notes, and that's about how he studies. So Nate is a read-write learner. Enter Emily. Emily was a little bit different. I had Nate, and I had him for 2 years before I had Emily, and he was like, oh, everything had to be organized. I took him to the doctor, thought something was wrong with him. Maybe we were putting too much pressure on this 2-year-old, and they said, nope, that's just him. Then I have Emily, who's just like all over the place. She's a little woody doll walking around, and we sit down and we try to do the same methods that we did with my son with Emily, and it wasn't working. So the way that we had to teach her words was we had to get a game where we did matching, and so she had to have her hands on something. So Emily is a lot like me in that she is what type of learner? She's also kinesthetic. Catherine is my baby. She's the third. I don't know what Catherine is, because by the time you have 3 kids, you don't pay attention to them. So I really don't know what she is. She just kind of floats around and plays piano and sings and stuff like that. But I do want to bring out with your learners, you have an immediate preference. So I'm a kinesthetic learner. But if you notice, I like to watch videos too. So I'm visual, but like my son, the way that I got through college was I had these messy notes, and then I'd go home and write them very, very neatly. And the whole time that I'm doing that, I'm thinking. This is the way I did this presentation. As I was creating it, I was thinking about what I was going to say, and I don't even know what I'm going to say. It'll just come out. What type of learner are you? Does everybody know? I know I've told you already, but there's a neat little resource that I want to show you about if you don't know what kind of learner you are. So, does anybody want to take the quiz? Anybody want to volunteer to take this quiz? There we go. Y'all can fight over it. So I had a backup plan in case I didn't have any volunteers, so I'll just tell Karen, you're off the hook. You're off the hook. So when you're instructing your classes, you always have to be prepared for things that may go wrong. So I'm going to tell you, I went through this presentation. Don't get nervous. There's going to be a little error message, but the quiz is going to come up eventually. And I apologize for having to turn my back on everyone. But that's the way this room is set up. So there's my little error message. It's going to take a second to come up, and there it is. So you want to do it, Daniel?
Sure.
Travis, I'm not playing favorites with you because I know you.
That's okay.
So this is just a little quiz that you can take. You can get your students to take it. First of all, Daniel, do you prefer listening to class lectures over assigned readings? There's a couple choices here.
No.
No, you need to see the words in front of you for them to stick. Can you memorize dance moves quickly?
Dance moves?
Yeah?
No.
I was watching you dance. I thought you did really good.
I spent 40 years memorizing dance moves.
Oh, okay. All right. What about music lyrics? Can you recite them? Verbatim?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. I might argue with you there because I thought I could, and then I started looking up lyrics, and I've been doing it wrong the whole time. I'm going to take your word for it.
They have a whole series of YouTube videos dedicated to misheard lyrics.
I've been
And I
there.
probably fall into that section more.
Yeah, that's me too. And so how organized are your notes? Are you like really neat and
Super neat.
super neat?
Yeah. Color coded and in order.
Wow, good
In
job.
OneNote.
So in what setting do you learn the best? Do you like big lectures? Do you like to sit quietly in your favorite study spot? Field trips or study groups?
Study groups.
Study groups. People person. And do you love charts and graphs?
Absolutely.
Me too. We'll be kindred spirits there. And how do you feel about standardized testing?
probably they're fine. Some exams go better than others.
Okay. All right, it's gonna calculate your visual. Have you ever self-diagnosed yourself as a visual learner? Okay, you're with about 20.6% of the population. So I'm gonna get back out of that and go to my presentation. If you're interested in taking that quiz, there's a Google search. I don't like to put URLs because people mistype them and then they don't work. So if you search JAG Play, what type of learner are you? It's gonna be the top selection and you can go take this quiz. All right, types of training, and I don't want to belabor this too much. I do have several slides dedicated to it though. But we have instructor-led training. That's kind of like what we're doing here. I'm going to touch briefly on this new thing that people are trying out, virtual instructor-led training. We have e-learning. We all know what e-learning is. We have hands-on training, which is kind of like on-the-job training. And then we have the immersive learning, which is probably what you guys are here to learn about. And then there's something really neat called blended learning, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that. All right, so instructor-led training, I don't want to go through all of this for every one of these, but there's some benefits, challenges, some situations where it's best used, and then where it's not recommended. So you're going to get a high-quality delivery. I hope you agree with that. You have immediate Q&A, and then you can also engage the audience and leverage student questions. However, as we found in the compliance world, that it can be very costly, particularly if you have one or two people to train every week and you have to tie up your internal resources, it can be kind of costly. So that's kind of a little challenge there. Sometimes with instructor-led training, you offer a class, people know they're going to need it, they come take it, and it's way before they need it. Other times, you observe someone on the job site, they're not doing a good job, you send them to the training and it's a little bit too late. So there's a little bit of a not syncing with the time that people need the training. The trainer must be knowledgeable about multiple applications in many situations. Unless you're focused on one topic where somebody has an area of expertise, you could have a whole bunch of topics, and then you're relying on the instructor to be knowledgeable in all those subjects. So have any of you ever experienced that in the training classroom? Travis, tell us about it.
As far as, yeah, I mean, jumping into a class where I thought somebody recommended it, and I thought I was ready for it, and it was way over my head, so I couldn't even grasp
what they were saying.
the expertise that I needed at the
I
time.
had a great class several years ago with an instructor who was very, very knowledgeable, but there were some topics that he was really weak in, but there was one that he was really passionate about, and you find that in some of those classes, but I never forgot the class because he was a great instructor. Some of his training materials needed a little bit of help, and we're not going to go into that, other than I'll just say make sure your training materials are structured in a way that the learner can get past how you're designing your slides to understand how to learn the rest of the class. You don't want to use a hodgepodge of different designs to where they're confused. I was a little confused in that class, but the instructor was so good that I was able to get what I needed to out of the classroom. So instructor-led, there's an example here. Who knows what the Basic Orientation Plus is? Most of you guys know what that is. So the Basic Orientation Plus has evolved over the years, and I'm going to show just a little bit of an example from that course, mainly just to show the slide designs and how that can be used too. And these are innovations in instructor-led training, so I don't want you to think I'm going to get out of the innovation part, but some of the elements incorporated into the Basic Orientation Plus are lecture, video, we've got some practical application in there, we've got some visual aids, we've got some hearing aids, some hearing protection that they demonstrate in the class. There's a student workbook for the students to follow along. And then instructor-led training, not necessarily the basic right now, but it can be done virtually with video conferencing that exists. I actually did a training session about 2 weeks ago over video, and it went very, very well. I met with the people afterward. I got their feedback. They were kind of a trial run for something that we're trying on the ARSC side of things, and we have another one scheduled. So we got some really, really good feedback, and we were able to focus on some things, and that eliminated the cost factor of the instructor-led training. So I'm going to click on this link, and I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. I don't know why I did that, but somehow I zoomed in. I gotta zoom out. I did. There we go. Sorry about that. That's never happened before. I don't even know what I did. So this is the general safety module, and I'm just going to go through the slide design here. So first of all, you want to start with your training objectives. This is true in any course that you do. You want the student to know what they're there for. Now, what we've done is incorporated some interesting slides. When students see this slide, they know that they are going to receive a definition, and they might want to take note because this definition is going to be used throughout the course. The little button on the bottom is how we communicate with the instructors that there's some movement on this slide. It also kind of makes it interesting for the learner to see this movement. Anytime you see this, it serves two purposes. The students know that they're expected to engage, and the instructor can kind of move around the classroom like I'm doing and look at those visual cues and know exactly how to communicate with the students. They don't need to be stuck to an instructor guide. You always want to follow up with reinforcement. This is your basic learning slide where we're doing lecture only. Visual learners here. We're going to show them some things so that they can see. And then this is what we call the teachable moments. And this is where you get some of that higher Bloom's level application. So we've just gone through a module. We're telling them a whole bunch of things that they need to know. And then we're going, you know what, we're going to give you an example. Let's look at this video. And I'm not going to play the video because I don't want you guys to have to sit through that video. We've got more exciting things later on. We're going to give them a video, and it paints a scenario where something bad happens on the job site. It's really bad. Somebody gets hurt. They die. And then we go here. We engage the students. We ask them to tell us what could have been done to prevent that. And they have to go back in their minds and revisit that content in their minds. And then we follow up with a reinforcement video. Always conclude with summary points. This is true of any kind of training program that you're going to do. Now let's look at e-learning. E-learning, there's the benefits, just in time, no travel, self-paced, whole lots of benefits. Challenges, self-directed motivation can be problematic. It's good for basic training. So we see a lot of e-learning and compliance training. But typically when people think of e-learning, they think it's, that's what it's used for. But there's a whole lot of innovation on the authoring tool side where you can do all kinds of things in e-learning courses now that you used to not be able to, particularly in the area of questions. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So this is an orientation that was developed. The elements incorporated generally are text, audio, graphics, but again, you can do videos, you can do gamification, you can do branching scenarios, and there's also mobile responsiveness. Who knows what that is? Does anybody know what mobile responsiveness is? Karen, what's mobile responsiveness?
The course will adapt to your mobile device.
Yes. Oh. So we're used to that with websites. It's where you take your phone and you turn it this way, and it's going to be a certain way, and then if you turn it sideways, it's going to be sideways. And Karen and I spent a lot of time last year figuring out how to make something that fits this way, fit this way. In training programs, it's a little bit challenging because it's not like a website. You're confined by a player, and so you have to do all kind of little designs. But that's meeting the learner where they are. And today's learners are not necessarily behind a computer. So that's a really big innovative thing that's happened in the e-learning world. Micro-learn. Who knows what performance support is? Kind of what I did in my yard with my weed eater is the performance support stuff. It's like I need it now. I don't want to mess around. I don't want to look at a handbook. I just want to get down to the nitty-gritty. And we have a lot of people that are asking for this, that are looking for this type of support. Whereas the instructor-led training can be lagged and when the need is, this is like right when you need it. So there's some animation video, there's practical exercise, there's a self-check in this particular one. So this is a heat exchanger. I knew this error was going to occur. I'm just going to hit OK. This little thing's going to come up. And again, just be prepared to know when those errors are going to happen. Let me go with this animation here. So this here is literally this whole, and I'm not going to put the audio on until later because it gets annoying when you're presenting, but it's going through all the different pieces of a heat exchanger that's going to give some good information for the learner who needs this right now. So I'm going to kind of let it play through. And I don't know a whole lot about heat exchangers other than what's here, and I'm just not an expert in heat exchangers. So once you go through this video, there's going to be an exercise that you have to do, and just in the interest of full disclosure, I did put a cheat sheet in there because I don't want to get it wrong in front of you guys a bunch of times, and I have to get it right to move on to show you the next piece that's part of the micro-learning. So I'm going to shut this part down, and I'm going to go to the exercise. And I'm going to pull up my little cheat sheet that I have here, channel, baffle, shell. So I've got the channel head, I've got the baffle, I've got the shell. I just can't remember it under pressure, so partition, tube, sheet, tube, bundle. I was going over this last night. I said, you know what, I better get a snip now that I finally got it right so I can cheat. So that's right, you got the correct response. I hit continue, and then I go to this self-check. And I believe that the answer here is maximize heat transfer. I submit, correct. And that button didn't work a little while ago, and then later on it did. There's one other question in this module so it's two questions. So you've got video, you've got the exercise, and then you've got this self-check. And the whole thing takes about 5 minutes. So that's a big thing that companies are looking for today is how can I get the information to my employees right when they need it without wasting time? Kathy talks a lot about time on tools, and one of the disadvantages of this instructor-led training, there are definitely those advantages, but one of the disadvantages is that people aren't working. So this gives it to them right there when they need it. Depending on what facility you work in, there may be the challenge of having an intrinsically safe device. But if you are able to have those devices, and I think they're coming out with some new devices that you can do this and they're intrinsically safe. So that's another innovation. There's innovation happening all over the place. Hands-on training, that's on-the-job training. There's some challenges with hands-on training, but there's also some benefits. So one of the things is that you've got improved productivity for some students. Now for employers, what that means is you're actually training them on the job, so productivity hasn't gone completely to zero. It may be slowed down because you've got some learners that are just learning some things, but it's that kinesthetic, quicker learning for some people. It's more cost effective. It can be less cost effective, but it's more cost effective in some ways because you're not sending people off for a week or two at a time to get that training. You've got expert supervision. They usually have subject matter experts there. Some of the challenges, you got improved productivity, but some students just don't function well in those environments. If they're not a kinesthetic learner, they may have a little bit of trouble. There may be some performance anxiety. Sometimes you have team disturbances. A lot of times in industry, we rely on people who work well in the field to do training, and not everybody can teach. Sometimes it can be rushed because they're trying to meet productivity tools, and because you have an inexperienced worker there, there's higher risk. There's some best for scenarios, and then there are some scenarios when it's just not recommended. You've got students of widely varying skill levels, and then you don't want to train on a process like in the middle of a turnaround or something like that. That would not be good. An example of hands-on training, and I can't give you a hands-on example of a forklift training, but that is an example. You are in a real-time immersive environment because it's real, and there's that practical application. And I believe forklift training sometimes it's just required. I mean, we're required by law to do some of this type of training. So at this point, I want to pause and ask, what's the best training experience that any of you have had? Does anybody want to volunteer? Because I really need some volunteers.
I could say that I work at ExxonMobil in instrumentation and analytical work. And what we find in the process of analytics with gas chromatography and computer-based GCs is if we train people in-house for a period of time just to get them some knowledge of the program and the system they're running, and then we send them out for professional training by the manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
So we get a more complete person, the employee,
Mm-hmm.
with them. with a good knowledge base. at
So it
that
sounds
point.
like you're using a variety of things in that training program. We're gonna talk a little bit about that in a minute.
Yeah. So that's been our best experience that we've had. It's hard to get a lot of that done these days with the budgets and all that they do.
Yeah, there's some budget considerations with all of the training. You know, some are more cost effective, but sometimes you just can't get around getting that employee the best training that you can. So we're going to talk about some of the immersive training techniques, which is probably what you came here for, just to see some of the new things. So just imagine if you think, I'm thinking about that program that I told y'all was a really good, positive experience for me, and it really, really was. I enjoyed it. The guy was knowledgeable. He kept my interest for an entire week. We didn't have this immersive learning. So you've got 360 photos, 360 videos, 3D simulations. There's that whole virtual reality thing, which I'm just in awe of, and then augmented reality. There's some challenges, like everything else. There's some definite benefits as well. Who can think of what the biggest challenge? I'm getting ahead of myself, but what do you think the biggest challenge is with something like virtual reality?
Cost.
It's the cost. But, good news is an e-learning module several years ago was really expensive to make. And, with the new tools that are out there today, and there's a lot of busybodies behind some computer somewhere that are working to make our lives easier. I see the cost of this coming down. And then you've got economics that are going to come in, supply and demand, that's going to bring all of that down for us normal folk. So the benefits, I'm not going to go too much into this. You can see them there. We talked about cost. That's the biggest thing. To me, I would jump up and down and say I'd want to do this anytime that I can, but I'm a kinesthetic learner. So there's some obvious benefits, and then the challenges and what it's best for. So I'm going to have to pop out of this for a minute. I don't think I can do it here. Maybe not. Might have to pop out of my presentation and turn the volume up because I've got a little video that I'm going to show you on this. Scroll back down to that slide. All right. If you notice here in the corner, this is what the person is doing with the training experience. They've got these glasses on, and they're standing in the middle of the room. But what you're seeing is what they see in those glasses. So we went and visited somebody on Friday that actually let us try one of these things out. It's a lot of fun, and there's even some sensations that you can feel that they build into it. Disney has incorporated this into their entertainment. I remember when I went to the Tree of Life, I got water splashed on me and smells and everything. We don't have this here, but this is about as, in my opinion, right now with current technology, as good as it can get. Things are moving around, it literally looks real, and then you can interact with these pieces. So this is a little bit of a lengthy video, and I'm going to give y'all a break from my voice and let you watch this video. You can superimpose words and stuff that shows the parts. And right now, this looks like a video, but that's what you're doing. And obviously, you need a little bit of space, and you have to make sure that the area around the person, there's a little buffer there. And, but some of the larger companies are doing this today. It's not like this is future, this is now. something like this built, you would get those technology experts to come to your site, and they can literally build a room that looks just like what you have, or they can build process equipment. That was what we were looking at, was some type of equipment where we could actually touch it. And this is just a table in a room. And so you kind of get the picture. That's virtual reality. I didn't get an example of augmented reality because I have something else that I would like to show you. Blended learning. So what you mentioned a little while ago was kind of a blended approach. And so this is very, very helpful. Blended learning is helpful because while virtual reality is expensive, some of that immersive learning, computer-based training is relatively inexpensive these days. So you can kind of help out your budget there by doing a combination, and it takes less time. There's some self-paced elements involved in that. So the blended learning approach, we've tried that with a couple of things, and it's been very, very successful. I'll talk about analytics in a minute, but there's also some analytics that you can do with that. It's great for collaborative learning experience. There's better communication. You can do some evaluations there. The strong technological dependence, that part comes in where you have an instructor-led component, but that instructor is the instructor, so you need to make sure that your instructor kind of understands the technology behind it so that they can effectively teach the course. It's best for part of an instructor-led course is community building. There's traditional training where a hands-on component is needed. Group socializations, people like to collaborate with other people, but it's not really good for small group settings. If the instructor has little to no technological expertise, and there could be, in the facilities part, some overhead, logistics, and operational costs. So while it's less expensive than virtual reality, there's still some of that instructor-led expense that falls through there. So this is the one that I wanted to spend a little bit of time on. This is the blended learning with the 3D lockout tagout trainer. So you can see I've got some things here, and there's a little demo that I want to show you. I'm not going to walk you through the whole thing. But I'll kind of give you enough so that you get the gist of what all this blended stuff is about. So, the elements incorporated in this particular one that I'm going to tell you is there is an instructional lesson. We'll talk about lockout tagout. There's a lockout tagout standard that OSHA put out. It's very factual. Nobody wants to go read the standards. So we put some things in a CBT, text, audio, graphics. Let's just go get that base knowledge. And then we're going to move on to some application, a practical application. There's a little assessment attached to the computer part where you can just kind of test their knowledge on what they learned in the CBT. And then there's a hands-on component. And that would be that piece right there. So I'm going to click on this here and show you what I mean by these three components. So we worked with a company out of California to help us develop this. Who's familiar with our safety awareness fundamentals is that, OSHA standards courses, CBTs that we developed. We worked with them. They incorporated that course as the instructional piece. And again, there's different types of learners there. Your auditory, your visual, and then we've got this practical, which is more of the hands-on. Companies like this, because it gives people a chance to get familiar with what's expected of them in a safe environment. So I'm going to focus on the practical piece. The exam, which is the assessment, is just questions. We don't need to go over that here today. So let's begin here. Now, one of the cool things about this is, I believe this was developed in Unity. Who knows what Unity software is? It's a cool program. But the student, when they start doing the training, they can move around here. I know you guys have seen this. You can get some motion in here. That's some electrical going here. Here's some flow things going on. And the first thing we need to do is understand the equipment and the hazards we're going to be working in. So you go in, you have a chance to tell them, this is a tank here. Here are the different pieces in case any of you in this room did not know. There's your power supply. You got a control room back here. There's your pump. And there's your control valve. So we're talking about lockout, tagout. So obviously some maintenance is going to need to be done on this equipment. And in order to safely do maintenance, we just walk in and start operating on the stuff while it's still moving and electricity's still going through it, because that's safe, right? It's not safe. We've got to go through lockout, tagout. So it gives you a little context about what is flowing through there, so that the student knows what the hazards are. And then we introduce the scenario with there's a problem, this is why it needs to be removed for repaired, you're the authorized person. They know all of this terminology from the CBT that they took. We got all that stuff out of the way so we didn't have to teach them in this environment. So then you have to answer these questions that I am going to get wrong, because I keep getting them wrong. In fact, I'm just going to answer them wrong to begin with, just so we can move on. So in this particular one, we have some chemical, pneumatic, hydraulic, and electrical issues. Well, not issues, energy that's flowing through. Those are the hazards that we're going to need to make sure that we're locked and tagged from. So is it necessary to shut down in order to remove the control valve? Lock out, tag out. Who says no? Who says yes?
What's the question?
Does anybody say anything? Do you have to shut down the equipment to do the maintenance?
No, not all the time.
Well, in this example, we do. Yeah, but you're the only one who knows about it. None of the rest of us. We're going to shut it down. You made me bomb out in my
We're
question.
gonna err on the side of caution.
We're going to err on the side of caution, and now you taught me something. You don't always have to, but you probably need to be qualified and certified or something if you're not going to do some shutdown. I would think. And then one of the things that we did here is you got your equipment, but then you got these drawings that, we wanted to give the learner an opportunity to see these drawings and to see that what it looks like on paper may not be what it looks like in real life. So they have to answer some questions. What needs to be done to shut down the process? I don't remember. Turn off the switch, I guess. I don't know. Yep, I got it right. It's a lot of pressure being up here. You don't understand. So based on the basic flow diagram, what valves would have to be closed? I don't know. I think it's might be wrong. No, it's 1 and 5. There you go. Probably won't hurt to shut down 4, but you don't have to. And then number 5, what needs to be done to release the stored energy? I think it's this one. Open them all. I got that one right. So I got a 50%. I don't know if they're going to want me to do their lockout yet, but I'll be able to do it. I will be able to do it after this, because it's hands-on or simulation. So we're going to prepare for shutdown, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing because Pepper wants to talk in a minute, so I'm going to have to give her time. So we're going to shut down the pump, and it's going to walk me through a series of steps. So I literally get to see the cause and effect of my actions. I'm shutting it down. Goodbye to the electricity. Now I won't get zapped. I'm going to turn this valve. If it lets me, there we go. There we go. And it has little sound effects. I don't know if you can hear. And I'm going to grab this valve cover. And then this is guided. It's intended to be guided to give the instruction. I'm going to select a lock. Thank goodness it's telling me which one. And then I'm going to select a tag. All very important components in lockout, tagout. And then it walks through placing the valve cover on the valve. I'm going to close that. I'm going to apply the lock to the valve cover. Put it there. I'm going to apply the tag. Boom. And I'm going to close it. Now I'm not going to walk you through the whole thing because I need to get moving. But it's going to walk you through different things through lockout, tagout, like the master lock or and hasps and all those things, all those good things that come with lockout, tagout. But I think you kind of get the point on what we're doing here. We're giving the learner an opportunity to interact in as real as possible of an environment that you can do on a computer. Really, really invaluable. The next piece that you can follow through with, you've got your CBT, which is your knowledge transfer, you've got your practical application and the simulation, you got a little test that you're going to take, and then sometimes you need to do an evaluation of the employee, and that's where these types of things come in. This is the instructor-led component. By the time they come in, you know that they've got the knowledge that they need, they've practiced, and you're going to take this real-life thing, which this one is not real life. It doesn't have actual product flowing through it. It doesn't have electricity, but they do exist. You can get them built. I know where one exists. I know where it's been used, and students actually have the opportunity to do the draining and applying the physical locks. You can demonstrate here. This is good for, you know, a safe environment where the product's not flowing through, but you can actually get them an environment in some of these programs at these community colleges. They've got real life product flowing through them. Instructor comes in, evaluates them. They bomb out on that, you know not to put them out in the field. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit because this is a piece that most people don't know about, and I've been accused by some people of being analytical, which I am. That's part of that accounting background. But while all of these great strides in innovation have been taking place on the front end, there's a whole lot of smart people. I'm not one of them, but they do computer coding and these authoring tools for these e-learning programs, even something for that lockout tagout where you're looking at people's movements. The whole time that they're interacting with the computer program, it's sending data back to whatever system is housing that program. So there's a whole lot of things that training managers, HR people would want to look at to determine the competency of their people. And you can get that from these computer programs. Makes a big case for e-learning. Anybody use any of that kind of data?
We do a lot of e-learning, but I don't know what they do with all the data.
There's reporting, whatever system that's on, I can guarantee you, if it's unless it's proprietary and it's not built to a standard, and even if it's not built to one of the most popular standards, there's data that you can get from that. And there's all kinds of things they're doing with that data. It used to be that you could just do some of the things that I'm going to show you in a minute, but now you can actually build personalized learning paths because computers are getting smarter and smarter and smarter, and every time a student interacts, it's building a profile for them, and it can do recommended training, and it can personalize the learning experience. So what kind of training data is available about your learners? There are some technical standards, and I know this is the boring part, but if you are a training manager, you're going to want to know this. You can find out where a student left off, lesson location. So if a student goes in and then they leave because they get called out to the unit, if they're doing e-learning at their desk, the system is going to track where they left off. This is important for a couple of reasons. You can determine how far they've gotten in their training, but then when they come back to it, they can pick up where they left off. And when they do that, they don't have to go back and start over. That's less time in front of the computer, more time being productive for their employer. Suspend data, that's bookmarks that can tell you the exact paragraph where you left off. It kind of goes hand in hand with the lesson location. Obviously, we can get pass, fail, incomplete. We can get raw scores, like 82. You can get mastery score, and you can look at the students' interactions. So how did they answer the question? Now, why do people use the data that way? The data is used because it can facilitate a self-paced learning. Learners can exit and return later. We talked about that. It can measure employee competence in specific areas. With the analytics that are out there, you can zero in on those most missed questions and determine where people are deficient, and you can also prescribe training to make up for those deficiencies. As trainers, we can look at that data and look at the questions and say, you know, 75% of people are missing this question. We got to look at the training. We got to look at the instructor and say, well, maybe they need some coaching, or maybe that computer-based training module is deficient in this area of the content, or maybe it's just a bad question. There's test validation that goes on. Maybe we got to go back and pick a better question. And then, really importantly, in the compliance world, when you couple these analytics with identity verification, then you have some possible legal defensibility in court. So if somebody gets hurt, I didn't know I was supposed to tie off. Yes, you did. They verified your identity at, 6:12 a.m. You were on this slide. At 7:12, you took a test. You answered it correctly, saying you needed to be tied off. Subpoena the training records, legally defensible. Okay, I'm being told that I'm out of time, which is really good. That's when you feel good, because apparently I got the timing okay. Anybody have any questions? We gotta leave time for Pepper to talk. Pepper likes to talk, so I'm gonna wake her up here in a minute. Does anybody have any questions about anything that I said this morning?
Sure, just a comment, like you were talking about tracking and trend data. I've worked for employers in the past to where also seeing how much time spent per question as well, or how fast they're going through the material to see if employees are just trying to, how many attempts at the questions, depending on whether it's timed. Because some of them time you out and make you stay on the slide for as long, but other programs, depending on how you select it, let you go as fast as possible. And seeing how many people, I've worked for employers to where they've identified employees that are just trying to get to the end, and then they're putting them back right through training again or through instructor-led because they're realizing there's a risk there for performance.
Absolutely. All of those analytics are available. We also have the ability to determine these learning management systems all over the place have the ability, how long does it take them to go through the training? Well, when employers are sending their people to take that training, they don't want them messing around. They want them to get the training. And so that's really, really important for controlling that employer's cost. So we have had employers, and I'm sure this happens everywhere else too, how much time? And we've been able to go and get that information like that from the system because it's tracking that. So you really can manage budget, you can manage training deficiencies, if somebody gets hurt on the job, there's all kind of things you can do. So anybody else have any questions?
I just want, at Exxon, I can tell you, our CVP training, our employees feel like it's lawyer training more than it is training. You do learn the procedures and policies of the plant, but the skill-based training is a whole another method.
Yeah, there's a time and a place for each one of
Right.
these kinds. So
Right.
if you think that you're gonna take somebody off the street and tell them how to work in a process unit, not gonna happen. It's through e-learning. There's other ways that you can do that. And that's going back to the beginning. What are your training objectives? What are you trying to do? And pick what is the most appropriate for the audience that you're dealing with. So I'm gonna wake Pepper up. There's my contact information with a really old picture of me that I put some extra lipstick on through modern technology. I'm gonna wake Pepper up. Let her do her thing. Just remember, when you have a robot, they are like cats. They control the environment. You do what they tell you to do. They're still here. All right, Pepper. Let's talk.
Hey there, come here to have some fun.
I'm here. You better still be here.
Let's do something together.
Let's do some neat information. How about
You
that?
got it.
All right.
How can I help you? Here are some questions you can ask me.
Pepper, can you tell us where you'll be after this session so people can come and visit you?
You can find me out in the main area by the registration table if you would like to come talk to me. I really enjoy talking and interacting with people, so please come by and see me. Here are some questions you can ask me.
She's a little rude. She was supposed to say thank you. Just a minute. Pepper, can you please tell everyone thank you for stopping by?
Of course I can. You have to be patient with me. I am just a robot. It's your fault for programming me that way. Sheri and I both want to thank you for attending this session. We hope you have received a lot of good information that will help you decide the best training options for your company. If you have any questions, let us know. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
I don't think I would say any better than that.